The barista's got a thing for me and won't let it go. I lean towards my laptop, staring blankly at the screen. I've been looking at the same thing for the past hour now. The cursor on the screen as it blinked on and off, asking, begging me to get to work. My phone buzzed gently again for probably the 20th time that morning. I didn't know what would happen if I didn't respond on time, but I figured it was about time I did. I flipped the phone over as it buzzed in my hand. It was the same exact person as it had been for the past 2 weeks. My utterly relentless agent, Tony. Noah, where the hell are you? His voice rang through the speakers. I already told you, Tony. Give me 2 more months. Tony chuckles, the same choppy chuckle he has when he disagrees with something I say. 2 months is a lot of time, Noah. How about I try this again? There was a short pause followed by a deep sigh, and then he said very calmly, Noah, you only have 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Did you just say 2 weeks? Look, Noah, you're a great guy, a good enough fighter too, but I think I've been more than patient with you. But look, you got 2 weeks, Noah, 2 weeks, or forget it. Click. Tony? I took the phone away from my ear, glancing at the blank screen. Tony! I placed the phone back on the table, easing the tension in the back with a huge sigh, looking around the coffee shop as if any hope for help existed within 4 walls. I pushed my laptop a little further and placed my head on the table. Ugh, must be a suckish day today, huh? I heard a voice say from behind me. I shut the laptop screen and turned to the voice. Ethan Moore. I hesitantly stretched out my hand to him. He has a strong grip. He's wearing an apron that clashes terribly with what I must admit is an incredible oxblood shirt. Oh yeah, the apron. I know, it goes terribly with this color, but you'd have to forgive me for that. Today's my first day. I nod my head gently. Did I just say what I was thinking? Where's Lucia? I asked him with a little uncertainty. Lucia? Oh, you mean the old bartender. She quit, he exclaimed. Quit? Community college, he said like it was a fact. Oh, yeah, he says, drawing out a word pad and pen from the apron pocket before whipping out his notebook. So, what will we be having? Coffee. Just coffee will be fine. I returned my gaze to the laptop screen. Ah, I see, he said, and placed the pen back where it came from. Black coffee, then. 1 sugar cube? I turned to him. He's standing eagerly watching. Yes, actually. Okay, be back with your order soon, he says with a bright smile, and turned away from the table. I watch as he steps away from my table. He gives at least a minute walking away from my table to the counter. He's talking with people as he walks away, and he always leaves them laughing or at least smiling. I turn back to my laptop and flip it open. That was only going to take a lot of getting used to for sure. Lucia, the old bartender, was the complete opposite, never caring to collect orders from each individual table. Say less about introducing herself. I'd even see her once completely ignore a customer who'd been too slow with their order. He was chatting with his buddies while she waited for him to order. He took his time. Unfortunately for him, however, Lucia didn't care for such, and when he finally did turn back to her, she was gone. Stuff like that made everyone give her 1 or 2 stars. Not me, however. She was sharp, prompt, and said nothing. That is 5-star bartending if you ask me. This new guy, on the other hand, Ethan, he was back, he said, stretching the A. He then swerved skillfully behind me, placing the cup on the coaster and a napkin beside it. Thank you, I said, and plugged my ear. Normally, that's a sign to leave, but I guess he didn't fully get it, 'cause he just stood there, peeking into the laptop screen. I placed one hand on it, half shutting the laptop and tugging my earpiece out. What are you... What are you doing? I'm curious. Uh, okay. And I asked, well, I'd like to know what you're doing. I stared at him and he blinked at me, then gazed at the screen. Okay. I turned away from him and shut the laptop close. Then I placed it gently in my bag and turned sharply to him. It was nice meeting you, Ethan, but now I've got to go. Your coffee, he says and points at it. Oh, yeah, that. Put it on my tab. I'll be taking it to go, I say, and make an indulgent face of regret. Oh, are you sure? He says. Yes, I say, nodding quickly. Okay, see you tomorrow then. Yeah, sure. I turn away from him, immediately reaching for the phone in my pocket to do so. I scroll through the coffee shop app, then swipe to staff. He's the second profile on the list. A picture of him, flashing his picture-perfect smile, appears at the top. Ugh. I scroll quickly down his profile, click ratings, and leave a 1-star review. I hear him call out from behind me, just as I get to the door. Also, don't bother. This was on me, he says and smiles. Sure thing, I say, hoping to see that smile on my face is not quite as genuine as his own. I push the door gently and the bell jingles. Peek into the cafe. I can see nobody is at the counter save for the owner who's furiously wiping the table. So far, so good. Morning, John. Morning, Noah. The usual? Yes, thank you. I glance nervously at my usual table, at the back of the cafe. I look around the cafe. Ethan's nowhere in sight. Perfect. I just need to get to the far end of the table. Perfectly hidden. I move tentatively, dodging left and right, until I'm at my table. All I need now is to, without any fuss, set up this darn table. Just about then, however, I hear a soft thud. Black coffee? 1 sugar cube, sir? The words came in a mock, posh accent, bowing as if he were a waiter in the fancy restaurant. No, he's found me. I butt my head against the table. Oof, he says, and rushes to help me. I'm fine. I prop myself atop the chair and settle in. Thank you, I say as I pull out my charger from my laptop bag. You're welcome, Noah. There was a silence as we stared at each other. Thank you for the coffee. Oh, welcome. I didn't know you were coming in today, I say, avoiding the intense gaze he was laying on me. I place my charger on the table. Were you looking for me? He says, immediately lighting up. No. As I say, my voice decides to get squeaky at that moment. Laughing, he said, You don't sound too sure, Noah. So far, it seemed like he was going to be wrong about me more often than often. I took solace in the fact. But in what he said now, I hated that it had to be one of the few that was the truth. He slid into the chair across from me, his eyes glancing at the empty notebook beside my laptop. So, you're a writer, huh? Yeah, well, trying to be. I felt the familiar wave of discomfort settle in, but there was something disarming about his gaze. What do you write about? I hesitated. No one actually cares, they're just being nice. He sat eagerly, smiling and waiting. He wanted to listen. Mostly fiction. Sometimes. I like to explore people, you know? How they see the world or how the world sees to them. Art in a way. His face lit up. Art? As in visual art? Or art in the process of everything? It was my turn to have my face lit up. Both. We both looked ourselves dead in the eye and began to laugh right after. Okay, he said out of breath. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of coffee. I'm a visual artist, a painter. Digital painting, he told me. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. This wasn't something I expected. You paint? Not physically, but I will try, he said. He paused and turned to me. I've got something I can show you. Want to see? I said hesitantly. Okay. Yeah, he said with a fist pump. Tomorrow? Yeah, maybe. I said, still reluctant about the whole idea, but the thought of seeing something related to art excited me. He grinned, his eyes warms. Good enough for me? Glancing back over his shoulder. Yep, John's gonna kill me. Thank you, Ethan. I say as he gets up. For the coffee. He stops, and then walks away. There was a bounce in his step. Anytime, Noah. I watched him walk away, a strange calm settling over me. There was a blank page waiting in front of me, but for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel quite so daunting. Taking a breath, I opened my laptop, fingers hovering over the keys, and before I even realized it, the words had started to come. November 15th, a day as productive as the last. I shut my laptop off, gearing to leave, when Ethan appeared beside me, one hand planted on the back of my chair. Noah, you got a minute? His voice was casual, but his gaze pinned me down. Sure, I replied, a little wary. He was closer than usual, and I felt a jolt of something I couldn't name. He reached past me, picking my empty cup. Come with me, he said, nodding toward the door. I got something to show you. He smiled, mischievous, as he dragged me along, his curly hair bouncing as he moved. Before I could say anything, he slipped outside, expecting me to follow. I hesitated, but curiosity, and maybe something else, got the better of me. 45 excruciating minutes later. We were in the gallery, and it was quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of jazz from hidden speakers. Ethan stopped us in front of a painting. I stared at it, trying to make sense of the chaotic colors in front of me. I could feel him watching me. You remind me of this one, he murmured, his voice lower, as if he were sharing a secret. I looked at him, trying to read his expression, but his eyes were on the painting. Care to explain? I asked, a little defensive. He shifted, standing so close I could feel his warmth. It's intense, like there's a lot to figure out. But once you're in, it just clicks. I swallowed, feeling a warmth spread across my skin. You got all that from one painting? He smirked, but his gaze softened. I got it from you. I glanced away, suddenly too aware of his presence. But he didn't back off. Instead, he lifted his hand, fingertips grazing my jaw. A touch so light, it made my breath catch. Ethan, He leaned in, the warmth of his hand still on my skin. Tell me if I'm wrong, he whispered, his voice a rough edge, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't answer. There was no time, so I closed the gap between us, the world blurring as his lips met mine. The kiss was soft but intense, the kind that made everything else fall away. He tasted like coffee and honey, warm and rich. I was lost in it, lost in him. When we finally pulled back, the silence between us was charged, almost electric. He smiled, his thumb brushing along my jaw. So, he murmured, you're not as immune to surprises as you think. I laughed, feeling more at ease than I had in ages. Ethan's eyes lit up with the same eagerness he had when he pulled me into the gallery. Actually, he said, this isn't just a random place. My own stuff's gonna be here next week. An exhibition I've been working on for months. He hesitated, almost shy, then looked at me with an intensity that made my heart skip. I'd love for you to come and see what I do outside the cafe. That sounds amazing. I'll for sure be there. He cupped my face in his hands and kissed my cheeks. Thank you. Several days later, I stepped into the cafe, falling back into the routine that was slowly, and against my better judgment, becoming less predictable. All thanks to Ethan. I found my usual spot and got my laptop set up, expecting the regular black coffee. When the cup finally landed on my table, something was off. The aroma was different, It was almost sweet. This wasn't my request, I'd said, looking at him confused. Ethan leaned against the table with a familiar, easy grin. I know. Thought I'd mix it up for you today. Latte with a touch of hazelnut. Try it. You'll love it. Love is a strong word. Indeed, Noah. Indeed. He clasped his hands together. Give it a go, Noah. Give it a go. He followed this with a smile. I eyed the cup and then looked back at him, unimpressed. I don't usually go fancy. Ugh. He rolled his eyes playfully. Noah, life's about taking risks, he said, his tone light but a bit teasing. Besides, you seem like you need a little variety now and then. I frowned, but picked up the cup anyway. My routine had taken enough hits lately. What was one more, right? I took a careful sip, and fireworks. How else could I describe it? It was amazing. It was meh. I mumbled the word, trying to focus on my scream, but Ethan just stood there, lingering. Did you just say meh? He asked. Yeah, it's pretty good, but meh. I nodded my head, and he laughed deeply. His teeth showed, and it felt genuine. I liked it. I liked him. I took another sip, trying to ignore the small, annoying warmth it felt in my chest. I loved it. So, this weekend, huh? He sputtered. We'll see, I said, with a smile, hoping he wouldn't hear the hesitation in my voice. Great, I'll take that as a yes, he said, already looking triumphant. Wear a tux. He left me then, flashing one last smile as he stood up and walked to the counter. I felt strangely unsettled. My phone buzzed against the table, shattering my concentration. I sighed, glancing down. Tony. Again. I already knew what this was about. Still, I picked up, bracing myself for the inevitable lecture. Noah, tell me you know what day it is. Thursday? I tried, feigning ignorance. Not my best effort, but I wasn't in the mood for theatrics. No, genius. It's T-minus 3 days till the pitch day. That day. The only day that matters right now. Please tell me you're ready. I leaned back in my chair. I'm working on it. Working on it? His disbelief was palpable, even through the phone. Noah, this isn't something you work on. This is something you nail. We clawed our way to the slot, prime time, just before Harper and Co. You screw this up, I won't mess it up. My voice came out weak. Not exactly confidence inspiring. Tony, of course, didn't let it slide. You better not. 3 days, Noah. 3 days to prove you're worth the gamble. No distraction. Focus. I'll check in tomorrow. And just like that, the line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone in my hand. 3 days. No distractions. Got a tux yet? Ethan said as he placed today's coffee of the day. What for? The exhibition? He said, his voice softer than I was used to. It'd mean a lot for me if you were there. I swallowed and then placed my drink on the table. There was the familiar pang of anxiety in my chest as I did. I had to tell you something. I might not make it there. He nodded, trying to keep his smile, but his gaze dropped to the table. Please don't do that. He chuckled and looked back up, searching my face. Look, what if you just come, it'll feel like I have someone who gets it, you know? Ethan, it's not you. I just have this thing and BS. You're just saying no. No, I'm not saying no. I just can't. I have a pitch. Can it be pushed? He said, his voice quieter, almost defeated. No. Okay. He chuckled and pulled away to himself. Okay. That's not fair. Moreover, I'm not even good with crowds. You'd be much better without me there, I snapped. That just sounds like an excuse. You can just tell me you don't want to go. he said, his smile all upturned in the moment. Ethan, it's not like that, I started, feeling the need to fix whatever damage I just caused. It's just me, okay? I'm not good at being there for people. He cut in, his voice sharper than I ever heard. Or maybe you just don't care to even try. I care, but this pitch, it's important for me, I said to him, a bit too desperately. Yeah, I get it, Noah. Your pitch is important, but you could have told me about it earlier. Why did you even agree to go if you had other plans? He said, the disappointment clear in his face. I tried to say something, but what could I say? Saying that I forgot about his exhibition would just make things worse. I knew I'd made a blunder, and now I had to get the consequences for that. Leave it, Noah. It's at 5 o'clock. He walked away and said, if you ever change your mind. I stood before 6 men, all in clad suits, delivering my pitch like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. The client took notes and asked questions. I delivered them with a punch, and Tony beamed. I should have felt proud, relieved even, but all I felt was hollow. I received a standing ovation and zoomed out of the boardroom. It was dark. There were no missed calls. It was just silence. I thought about texting Ethan, maybe apologizing, maybe something else, but the words wouldn't come. What would I even say? I walked past the gallery on my way home, just to look. The lights were dimming. The doors already locked. I stood there for a minute, maybe 2, before walking away. The cafe was quieter than usual. Ethan was behind the counter, moving with practiced ease, his smile quick and fleeting as he handed off a latte to a waiting customer. Just coffee, just routine. I stepped up, my mouth dry. Ethan looked up, his usual eyes meeting mine, for the briefest second before he looked away. The usual? To go? He asked, his voice polite, but lacking the warmth it used to have. Yeah, I said quietly, the usual. He busied himself making my drink, and I watched him. I couldn't tell if he was trying to act normal, but I could see no cracks. When he placed my coffee on the counter, our fingers almost brushed, but he pulled away too quickly. Thanks, I said, my voice sounding small and apologetic. Ethan nodded. Have a good one, he said, turning to the next customer. I lingered for a moment, my mind racing with 100 things I wanted to say. I turned away and walked over to my table. I took a sip of coffee, but it just tasted bitter. Not much changes in 1 week. Most might agree, but every day since Ethan and I stopped talking has felt longer than it needed to be, at least to me. I walked past the cafe several times before actually stepping inside, but each time, I was done being there for coffee. I was here to see him, but today, I was disappointed. The counter was managed by some college kid. I stood in line longer than I needed to, glancing toward the back ever so often, half expecting to pop out of the storeroom, or the kitchen, or wherever he disappeared to when things got busy, but he didn't. The kid handed me my coffee with barely a glance, and I shuffled to my usual corner, gripping the cup like it was some kind of lifeline. I stared at my untouched coffee, trying to sort through the mess in my head. I glanced at the clock, then at the door. Part of me hoped he'd walk in, flash that easy smile, and call me out for being such a coward, but he didn't, and I hated how sad that made me. I set down the coffee, pushed the chair back and stood. And then the idea formed almost without me realizing it, but once it was there, I couldn't shake it. Okay, I muttered under my breath, grabbing my bag. If trying means something, maybe I should go to his place. I knew where he lived, since we passed outside his house once on one of our random walks. The thought of showing up unannounced was nerve-wracking. but so was sitting here doing nothing. I knocked on his door, the sound echoing louder than I expected, and for a second, I thought maybe he wasn't home. Then, the lock clicked, and the door opened. Ethan stood there, brow forward in confusion. "Hey," he said cautiously, his voice neutral but not unkind. I fumbled with my words, my hands twisting the hem of my shirt. "Can we talk?" Vulnerability had never been my strong suit, but I was here, and that had to count for something. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder, then nodded. "Yeah, of course. Come in." The weight pressing on my chest eased, just a little, following him inside. I told myself, this was it, my chance to make things right. Ethan joined me a few minutes later, wiping his hands on a towel. He sat across from me, posture open but guarded, like he was bracing for whatever came next. "I'm sorry," I blurted, the words tumbling out faster than I intended. I clasped my hands together to keep them from shaking. "I shouldn't have snapped at you. It was unfair." His expression softened, but he didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it sit there, heavy but necessary. "Yeah, it hurt," he admitted, his voice steady but not angry. "But I figured you needed space, or time, or both." My throat tightened. I do. I took a breath, trying to piece together the mess in my head. I've always kept people at arm's length. It's easier, it's safer. I convinced myself I was better off alone. But then you showed up, and you made me feel so much, and that terrified me. Ethan listened, his gaze never wavering. "I get it," he said. "You think I don't have fears and doubts? Because I do. I just deal with them differently." I looked up, surprised. I never considered that Ethan, the bright, charming barista who always seemed to have it together, might have his own struggles. "You always seem so sure of yourself." He let out a short, almost self-depreciating laugh. "Yeah, that's the performance. Underneath, I'm a mess too, but I'm learning, just like you." His honesty hit me in a way I hadn't expected. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. "I'm tired of being afraid," I said softly. "I don't know how to be better at this, at us, but I want to try, if you'll still have me." Ethan's lips curved into a small smile, warm and genuine. "I think we can figure it out together." The weight on my chest lightened, just a bit. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't suddenly okay, but I was here, and I was trying, and that had to count for something. We took things slow after that. I started coming back to the cafe, sometimes to write, sometimes just to be around Ethan. The anxiety never fully went away. There were still mornings when getting out of bed felt like an impossible task. Days when the urge to retreat into my shell was overwhelming, but I fought it, and every time I stepped through those cafe doors, I reminded myself that I was choosing to be brave. Ethan never pressured me. Our interactions were easy, unhurried. Sometimes we just sat together in silence, him working on sketches while I tapped away at my laptop. Ethan invited me to his art studio. It was a tiny, cluttered space, with canvases propped up against every wall, and the smell of paint hanging in the air. I hovered awkwardly at the entrance, feeling like an intruder. He noticed and handed me a paintbrush. "Come on," he said, grinning. "You can't be here and not make a mess." I took the brush hesitantly. I wasn't an artist, but I let him guide me, splattering paint onto a blank canvas. At first, it felt ridiculous, but soon, I found myself laughing, the tension easing from my shoulders. It was messy and imperfect, but it felt good. Ethan laughed along with me, paint streaked on his arms. "See, chaos can be fun." I looked at him, the light catching his eyes, and felt a rush of something. equal parts in joy and terror. I was still scared, but I was also happy, in a way I hadn't let myself be in years. And as I stood there in his tiny studio, marking the canvas with the most absurd paint combination Ethan had ever seen, the realization dawned on me that I was in fact very happy at this moment, and it was all thanks to him. That evening, as we walked back to my apartment, we stopped at a bridge overlooking the river. I leaned on the railing, the cool breeze brushing my face. I'd always loved this spot. The way the city lights danced on the water, the hum of life muted by the gentle rush of the river below. I'm still terrified, I admitted, my quiet voice, of messing this up, of not being enough. Ethan moved closer, our shoulders touching. His warmth seeped through the thin layers of fabric between us, grounding me in the moment. Me too, he said softly. But I think that's part of it, right? Being scared and doing it anyway. I turned to him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation, but there was none, just honesty. Maybe a touch of nervousness, but mostly that familiar spark of confidence that made me believe I could be braver too. Yeah, I said, a small smile pulling at my lips. I guess it is. He grinned, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The city hummed around us, and the world kept spinning, but it felt like we carved out this tiny pocket of stillness just for us. Ethan broke the silence first. So, does this mean you'll finally let me teach you how to dance? I laughed, a real unguarded sound. Don't push your luck. He turned to face me, leaning on the railing, his expression turning uncharacteristically serious. Noah. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah? I need you to know something, he said, his voice steady but quiet. You're already enough. You always have been. And if you let me, I'll be right here, no matter how messy it gets. My chest tightened, but this time, it wasn't anxiety. It was something else. Something warmer, steadier. I felt a lump in my throat as I tried to find the words. I don't know if I can promise to be perfect, I said finally. I overthink, I shut down, I'll probably frustrate the hell out of you. Ethan's lips curved into a soft smile. Good thing I'm annoyingly patient, huh? I laughed again, but it came out shaking. You're ridiculous. Ridiculously into you, yeah. Before I could overthink it, before I could let fear get in the way, I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't perfect. I was awkward, unsure, but Ethan met me halfway, his hand coming up to cut my face gently. When we pulled back, his smile was brighter than ever. See? Not so scary, right? Shut up, I muttered, but I couldn't help smiling too. We walked back to my apartment, hand in hand, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was living. It wasn't a grand, sweeping romance like in the movies, but it was real, it was messy, and it was ours. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. A few weeks later, Ethan had another exhibition at a nearby art gallery. This time, I didn't repeat my mistake and accompanied him to his expedition. All proud of his achievements as people congratulated him. I was a bit nervous with all those eyes on us, but Ethan was holding my hand throughout, his warm presence comforting me in ways I never thought possible. That's when I officially asked Ethan to be my boyfriend, letting go of all the fears of the past. Of course he said yes, and with Ethan in my arms and the people cheering around us, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be, because with Ethan, even the scariest of situations seemed pleasant. The end. Does anxiety ever creep into your relationship? How exactly did you deal with it? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our rainbow force and stay wholesome.